Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Adobe Fonts Show. It has been a little
Yes,
while.
we're back.
We are back. Episode 36. This is going to be a really good show. We're not going to waste too much time before we get into it, but we are going to say a few things before we get started. Ari, how are you?
Yes, I'm doing great. I
Good.
have to acknowledge your new look, Ben, because our audience hasn't seen you.
Yes, it's still me. This is still Ben. You can see because I have the name
Say
tag.
something that only Ben would know.
Mm,
I
mm.
don't believe you.
Well, I still have the red hoodie, so the hair's gone and the beard's gone,
Oh,
but the hoodie's here, so
yes,
you know it's me. And I have the name tag.
that's true.
So I think that's as much proof of as I have right
If he
now.
says anything weird, you know it's an
If I
impersonator.
just start shorting out, or like, yeah.
It's great to see you. And for those of you that haven't met me, I'm Ari, the library manager for Adobe Fonts. And my team works with all the Foundry partners that design the fonts that are included in your Creative Cloud subscription. We currently have over 150 partners, and we consistently add fonts to expand our library.
Yes, and I'm Ben. I'm a content producer here at Adobe Fonts. I started out in support answering web font related questions for a very long time, and then moved over into doing things like the Adobe Fonts show and just trying to help you get the most out of type when you're using Creative Cloud. And if you're new to Adobe Fonts is a library of over 20,000 fonts that you can use with your Creative Cloud subscription. So that's a lot of fonts. You can use them for personal and commercial use. And if you don't know where to get started, check out our recommendations page at fonts.adobe.com/recommendations. That'll help you get started. It's lovely to look at, but also you can just start activating things right away and take it from there.
Yeah, and here on the Adobe Fonts show, we talk about all things fonts and have great workshops with professionals in the type world. If you like the show, subscribe to Adobe Live on YouTube. We used
Yes.
to be on the Creative Cloud channel. Now we're on the Adobe Live channel. So make sure you subscribe to that and also follow Adobe Fonts on Behance, and you'll be updated on all future
And
episodes.
all past episodes are linked from Behance as well. So if you want to look through that, they're very evergreen stuff. A lot of the content that we do is just broader and not very timely, and so you can kind of watch it whenever you feel like learning something new.
Yeah. I see a lot of people joining the chat. A lot of people are surprised to see Ben's new look.
Yes, the hair was 10 years and the beard was 5 years, so it's been a long time.
Yeah. We have Sean, Barbara, Cody, Annika, Rachel, Camille, Ernie, Oliver, Carlos. Welcome,
Yeah,
everyone.
welcome. Good to have you.
Let us know where you're joining from. I
Mm-hmm.
see Ernie's in San Jose. Josh is next to Ernie.
Literally right next to Ernie. uh,
Yeah, do we have anyone from Brazil? We have someone, Arthur.
nice.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. I'm in Brooklyn, so East Coast over here. But I grew
And
up in LA,
I'm,
so I used to be West Coast. So,
yes, you
I
did.
try to bring both to every stream.
And I'm in Oakland, California. So let us know where you're from. We've got a lot of Brazil. I wonder why. We'll
Hmm,
see.
what could that be? We also have a quick audience poll, and you can take your time with this and just name fonts throughout the stream whenever you feel like it. But we were just thinking, name a current font that you really really like, and then name an all-time favorite font. So anything that comes to mind for either of those or both, dive right in. Ari, anything come to mind for current or all-time?
Um, when you say current or all time, I think of fonts that are modeled after older fonts like revivals.
Mm-hmm.
And there is the font, the typeface named Windsor, which is really cool and like now used a lot as a retro
Is it kind of a
typeface.
rounded serif? Or
Kind of rounded, and it has the A, the two-story A that like leans over.
okay, yeah, yeah.
And there's been a lot of revivals of Windsor, and I really enjoy looking at them. Um, I'm trying to remember the name of the one from Newlyn. I think New Spirit.
New Spirit, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be what came to mind for me.
Nice.
We have a few answers.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Rodrigo
Annika
says
asked.
Dolly.
Oh, good one. Uh, Annika asked, is the font on screen Degular? Yes, it is. Nice from
Yes,
Onotype.
good eye.
Good eye. Yeah.
Oh, and we're seeing a lot of people's locations. We've got Nairobi, Kenya, UK,
Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Sao Paulo, different
Awesome.
areas of Brazil.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Represent. Nice. Well, keep letting us know
Yeah.
fonts that you love, either current or all-time faves, in the chat. And we're just going to dive right into the topic because it's a good one, and we want to get through as much of it as we can. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So I'll introduce our guest today. Our guest is Rodrigo Sayani. He's a type designer from the Brazil-based type identity and branding studio Plow. And Plow's fonts are available on our service. So you can check out their Foundry page on fonts.adobe.com. They're also part of Type Network, which is a large distributor of independent foundries. And Plow's mission is to make type as popular as music. So
That is
I
a good
think that's a
mission.
really great goal. And let's just bring Rodrigo on. We can't wait to hear.
Rodrigo, welcome to the Adobe Fonts
Hi.
Show.
Hello, everybody. Ben, I've met you only with short hair, I believe.
Yes.
Maybe I spoke to you with longer hair, but I saw your thumbnail image, and yes, you look quite different. But I can attest that you're not a parody account; you're the real one.
Thank you for that vote of
Um,
confidence. That helps a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely, Ari. Thank you so much. We spoke before. It's a big honor. And I'd like to just give a slight nod to Dan Redkin, who made this all possible. It's been a while since we started talking about this session, right? So yeah, let's go right into it.
Awesome.
Great.
Let's get in.
All right. So today I'm going to talk to you about, and I should be with my screen shared the right way, Ben. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
And we're going to talk about variable brand voice, right? So Adobe Fonts is this amazing service where you can get all the fonts you need for any project that you have. We are big users. Before even being on the platform, we were on Typekit, which is the predecessor of Adobe Fonts. So it's pretty much been there all of our creative lives. And of course, Adobe as a brand has been there since day one, right? So you can follow us on our website, plow.design, on our Instagram page, plow design, at Adobe, fonts.adobe.com/foundry/plow, or via Type Network. Dan, hi, thank you so much for that. And these are the 6 people who are doing most of the work you'll see today. I tend to say that I am the one to kind of lead the way, but they are the ones getting their hands dirty and doing the work every day. So Aline, Ana, Gabriela, myself, Rodrigo, Kaká, who's in the chat today, and Walter, who manages our content. They are here for this, right? So variable brand voice is an idea that I gathered together when I was trying to speak about variable fonts with people who come from a background of branding, right? So being a type designer myself, I tend to use words that are very technical, but I'm very aware of how much other people don't understand these ideas. So I try to make it very palatable for branding people, right? And I always like to start talking about variable brand voice with this question, which is very weird, and I know. And you can answer on the chat if you still drink Coca-Cola. I'll make this very fast, so I won't see you answering them so fast. But if you do still drink Coke, do you prefer regular Coke or Coke Zero? Ari, Ben, I spoke to you about this before, but I would love to hear your answers just to have someone to play with on this chat. Yeah.
Zero.
I'm gonna
Coke
go.
Zero.
I'm gonna go Coca-Cola Classic.
All right, so we have 50-50 here. I am not a Coca-Cola drinker myself, so it would be like 33% of the answers will be represented here. Yeah, so somebody says no. And usually when I do this talk in person, many people will say they still drink it, and not as many people will say they prefer Coke Zero. But I would like to ask you, if there was a Coca-Cola 0.256 content of sugar, would you drink it? Would you rather drink that than drink Coca-Cola Zero? Because you think there's not enough sugar for your taste, right? So to move forward with this, I would like for you to keep this your answer in mind, in check, so that we can match it with what you're gonna say today, right? How these ideas came together, it came from me looking at projects that were made before branding was a thing. This project that we've done, and this screen represents the whole idea behind this brand, is a 150-year-old brand called Granado. And we worked on several projects with them. But one thing that got to my mind was how incredibly diverse their communication was when it wasn't there wasn't the need to be consistent or to be cohesive. So each product had its own label, had its own representation. There are elements that make them be together and not feel like a completely different thing, like the six-pointed star, the color red, all of that kind of melds them together. But all in all, it's like a varied, super diverse idea, right? After that, I went looking for contemporary examples of what a flexible identity would look like today. And I came across one of those. There are many examples, but I chose to bring one that is made by Dia Studio. And the project is made for Squarespace. And in this project, they designed a custom typeface that's based on the New York subway, if I'm not mistaken. They gathered the idea of a square cube thing, and also they designed software around it to make the identity super flexible, super easy to design new communications for the brand. So the whole branding team has not only a typeface, of course, a brand guideline, but also software that makes it work. So I'm very interested in the ideas behind things like this, right? And of course, when we looked at Granado, it was kind of naive. It was not intentional. On the other hand, Dia Studio made something very intentionally flexible, very intentionally active, right? So this is where I think variable fonts will shine more and more each day, right? In 2016, variable fonts came to the scene. For you who hasn't been around long enough, like myself, I'm 40 now, I remember multiple master typefaces. And these were a early format of variable fonts from Adobe, in which you played with a little bit of handles and made it heavier or thinner or more extended, or more condensed. And this is exactly the same thing as variable fonts, only that variable fonts were also made for soft optimization in terms of font size. So you gather everything around a typeface into one single file. And that's beautiful for many reasons. It's easier to manage. There's a lot of opportunities for animation and design, right? In 2018, so 2016, variable fonts came. 2018, we had a trend in branding, which I not very, fondly call blending, in which every single brand was trying to be more mobile, was trying to be more social, was trying to get the attention of people in their phones.
Is this your term that you made up, or you've heard it elsewhere?
I think at that time, I spoke about it, but I think it's something that more people than myself know about. Like blending is a thing.
Yeah.
I knew about it. I just didn't know the word. I love that word.
Yeah.
It's good, right?
It's really good.
And it was very well represented by James Edmondson, the now one of the people behind Oh No, but the founder of Oh No Type Co, who made Dagler from the first screen in our live today. And he looked at it and said, everybody fall in line. So Google, Airbnb, Spotify, Pinterest, they all went sans serif, either Helvetica-like, like if you look at Pinterest, Helvetica, Spotify, something resembling Gotham, probably. Airbnb, like maybe, I don't know, FF Mark or something like that. And Google would be like Futura or something customized out of a geometric sense, right? Of course, they all have different reasons to go that route. Airbnb, for example, from something that was very niche, became very popular and very broad. And that's how I think about these brands when they do these movements, is like they needed to service a broader audience. Hence, they didn't want to hurt any single audience. And that's why I think most people choose sans serifs to begin with. But
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that you need to look from the inside out. You need to know who you are in order to dress yourself as the way the world will accept you, right? So this is kind of profound, and I hope this is more fun than profound, but this also happened to fashion houses. And this one is a bummer, in my opinion, because there's so much good in each of these logos and so much history around it that just changing them to something else means that it's the trendsetters are actually following a certain trend. And this is kind of like a very clashing idea to me, right?
Yeah,
So these
the previous logos just look so much more iconic and like
right
and unique
Don't you
from each
think?
other.
Absolutely. So I mean, it's crazy to think that they went all the same at the same time to routes that are very similar. And one thing that's particularly mind-boggling to me here is that every one of these brands chose all uppercase typefaces to represent their brand. So it's, they didn't even play around with lowercase. And in 2019, this trend reached kind of a peak, and then everything around it. And that's why I think Ari mentioned Windsor on her opening notes. That's because in 2019 came a brand called Chobani, led by Leland Mashmar, who's a Collins co-founder with Commercial Type, which is an amazing type foundry. And they designed this identity for Chobani. And Chobani has this, it used to be a very sans serif Greek kind of insignia, Neville Brody-like sans typeface. And they went all in the serif, smooth serif typeface. And this project became a big hype. It went on brand new on all blogs that you can believe, that you can remember. And it became a very huge hit in the branding world. So it kind of gave permission for everyone around the branding world to go serif or to go expressive, right? Of course, type is not the only thing here. Photography, illustration, everything around this brand is just amazing. And it became a huge sensation, right? And mixing these ideas that variable fonts need to live with branding and needs to avoid, blending, I came with the idea that a variable brand voice could make what we call flexible identities into something that's super personal, that we can speak to each person in a different way, right? So bear with me, and that's where I want to talk about that Coca-Cola that I showed you in the beginning. What about that Coca-Cola? And this is how the way I found to explain variable brand voice to people that's very simple to understand, and that makes a statement with some big brands because they rule the world somehow. So if you get a Coca-Cola, imagine that you can get a Coca-Cola on your house just in time, and you want a specific amount of sugar delivered to your house in 30 minutes by a drone, and you just use an app to choose that Coca-Cola. The production of that Coca-Cola could be totally personalized to your taste. So it would be more eco-friendly, as it wouldn't be wasteful. So you would print the can on time, just in time. You get the content out there and fresh out, like almost like machine Coke, like, refill Coke delivered to your house. So we envision a logo type for Coca-Cola that looks a little bit like this. So if you're into Coca-Cola Zero, then you have a logo that has very little content of sugar there. If you're into classic Coke, as Ben mentioned, you can go the regular Coke. But if you want a sugar high Coke because you're into an all-nighter, then you can get a sugar high Coca-Cola, right? So you can get those, very, very chunky letters. And this could all be done through an app, for example. So you just, move the needle to which content of sugar you want. And then everything is printed and made around that. So it's really interesting to see. Ari is saying on the chat she wants a more sugar on her Coke. Maybe it's caffeine, maybe it's not sugar. So the sugar is the same, but you get more caffeine to get your veins going and everything. So that's like a fun way to think about it, right?
Yeah. So then you don't have to write anything on the can. People will know if they get the thin one, they don't have a lot of sugar.
Yes. And funny enough, I think Coke made a whole set of cans that has personalized names and everything. So it's pretty much doable, right? It's something that's very much, technology is there. The idea is there totally. So, and then I started envisioning another example, something that was not only based on a logo or on such a simple idea as a soda. So I was thinking about magazines. My background has a little bit to do with designing magazines. I used to do branded content for magazines. And then I was looking at Vogue's editorial voice, but we were also going through a very big stage in our history where diverse voices needed to be heard more and more, right? So I was thinking on how to make Vogue's voice more in sync with time, with current times, right? With the zeitgeist, if I may say. So I was thinking of a Vogue in which you had this standard editorial voice, but based on our own personalities and preferences and whatever, we could have delivered to our house a specific edition of Vogue, say September. The edition for Vogue would be different for Rodrigo than it would be different for Ari and then Ben, right? So you would have a Vogue that looks a little bit like this. It could be more condensed, more extended, or even reversed. And this is where I think the idea starts to be very, very interesting, because you can really get clashing ideas to be part of a certain publication to allow for different voices, dissonant voices, to speak all together in one single forum, right? And that makes for something that's very interesting in terms of I would totally read a magazine that wants to tell me something that I'm totally not expecting as well, right? This is a problem with algorithms and social networks, right? They deliver what we like. And what about the thing that may contrast with our ideas, right? I think we need to really look into those. So imagine this is Ari and Ben's magazine in September. So Ari gets one featured character in the cover, Ben gets another one. The logo is different for each. The typeface they can choose is different. The design of the spreads and the interiors may use different typefaces and fonts. And then each experience will be totally different. And maybe Ben gets dissonant voices for something, Ari for another one, and everybody gets more out of each edition, right? So that's where I think variable brand voice can really shine, in making the conversation between people and brands smarter, more personalized, more interesting, right? And then when I did these two ideas, I started having people come to me and say, but what about my brand? But what about this specific brand? And I always try to do things in-house before I deliver them to clients, right? So I tried doing variable fonts at Plow. So at Plow, we teach and sell fonts. So there's kind of three different audiences. I talk to students a lot, I talk to brand managers a lot, and I talk to final customers a lot. And those are three different audiences with totally different sets of needs and goals. So I wanted to express Plow's view in a varied way so that we could talk to them quite nicely, right? So this is how our logo looks. It has three keyframes, must I say. Ben and Ari and myself were talking it offline. In where do I come from in terms of design? I come from animation more than anything. And if there's something that's totally related to what I do today, it's animation. And Plow, we can express ourselves. This one is the one we like the most, the crazy one I call, this brush kind of chunky logo.
So good.
But if we talk about a corporate brand, we may dress ourselves as a sans serif if we want to, what do you call, like create rapport, or we could clash with their ideas by showing a totally more expressive identity. So from the inside out, we can either connect or contrast with what they are looking for. So this creates a very powerful way to start a conversation around something that we are already talking about with them. And then we started solving identity problems with variable fonts. And I bring you the first logo type that we've made with variable font technology, which needed to address the speed. I needed to do this logo very fast. So I wanted to do something very expressive with the least amount of work possible. So I pretty much designed a pixel that goes from a square to a plus sign. I'll show you the animation right now, and you'll see what's going on. So from this single pixel that turns a square into a plus sign, I designed the whole set of digital characters, like bitmap characters, and the identity was done. So the idea behind this project strategically is that a lot of coders and hackers come together to solve big problems in a city. So pixels become plus signs. They multiply. They sum together, work together to solve these things, right? I am going to hop in. I'm going to move out of the presentation right now because I think we need time to show this stuff in the real world, in like Illustrator, right? Because this is Adobe Live. This is not a keynote. So let's look at this. And I gathered some examples of our projects in which you can see variable fonts being used in many different areas. I'll start with this one, which is another. This one is called FabStart. Let me do presentation mode. Not this one. Let's go there. Sorry,
And
guys.
let us know if you have any questions for Rodrigo. Just put them in the chat.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to ask them. So anytime.
Absolutely. Yes. So I'll show you FabStart, which is this bridge between startup companies and big names, like big industries, oil companies, and both of them have different goals, right? So startups, they need the money and the structure to get their product out there and make a difference in the world. Big companies, they move slower and they need help from the startups to think more agile. They need to be faster in thinking, right? So FabStart has this identity, and I think this is well represented here in this quick video, which is this one, in which you go from sketch to finished product and back again. So it's never static. It's never stopped, right? And it is always ever changing and ever connecting. And this is a variable font. So we use this as a logo, but it's also a variable font. And I'll show you real quick in Illustrator how this works. Actually, first I can actually show this in Glyphs. Glyphs is the software that we use to design typefaces, right? Before we go to Illustrator, we design the typeface, and this is how it looks. For example, the letter H is composed of actually 6 different rectangles. And then we make those rectangles heavier. And then we make the same 6 rectangles heavier so that it looks filled. So let's see how, for example, the letter S looks. This is 2 different shapes blended together in order to look filled, but it's not. Like if I move this around, it will probably create some gap like this, right? So this is how it's done, and I can actually preview the animation in Glyphs using an amazing plugin by this guy Mark Fromberg called Variable Font Plugin Preview. I mean, and this is good. And the great thing about this is that I can export from Glyphs and take it into any Adobe software like Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, and I can play with this. So if I want to make this heavier, all I need to do is go to this little thing here, right beside the instance. I can choose an instance. I can choose this. We've done for FabStart from 0 to 100, like it was the start and the finish of an animation. This is how they manage that. But we could also, sorry, this is not where it should be. Oh, yeah, there we go. So I can play around with the weight, and then it becomes heavier or thinner, right? And I can choose it on a letter base. So if I want to do this one to be different, and then this one to be a little lighter, and then I start going back again to heavy, you get the drill, right? So we can really play a lot with this. We also did a lot of things, for example, with headlines. So imagine we had a headline that needed to be 3 lines, for example. We could do FabStart is really something. I don't know. Yeah, just then our client would choose something like this, right? So you would be thin and then all the way to either like almost finished. So look how cool this looks in a setting, like in a multi-line setting, right? So this makes for a really interesting headline, and then it's all about starting conversations, right? So that's a nice way to look at it from a logo type / headline typeface way. I also brought some hex around. So this one is not carbon. This is our logo, and this is how it looks as a variable font. So our logo is a variable font, and it has 3 instances. One we call brush, the other one we call sans, and the other serif. So it's pretty much easy to go from one to one. And that's the beauty of variable fonts. You can do either by the preset standards, or you could do something in between, right? So at Wow, we don't use the in-betweens that much. So that's why it doesn't look as polished as we can. But if you wanted, I could go to a client with something in between a serif and a sans, for example. If I sense that the client was like, innovation oriented, but not that much, I could go like, in between. And that's really cool. And it's also possible with a super simple tool in Illustrator, which is called Blend. And I love Blend. Blend is probably the way that I got into interpolation, right? So the idea behind fonts is that you design 2 extremes, like the ones that I showed you here. So very light and then filled. There's an in-between here just for the sake of it, but you could only have 2 of these. And then you can blend them together. That's pretty much what it is, right? So I grabbed one of our typefaces from the library at Adobe Fonts called Tennis. Tennis is this amazing serif that might be on the Windsor kind of trend. And I designed two new weights, two new free weights, just by using the blend tool. And I'll do it again so you can see. So I'll grab like tennis here. Let me just, yes, this is tennis black, and I'll do tennis bold. I'll do the same letters. So they need to be the same letters for a reason, right? Because they need to be the same thing, pretty much. But if I select this one, go to the blend tool, click and click on the other one, it'll give me as many in-betweens as I want. If I just double click the blend tool, I can I used to choose specified steps. You can have smooth color. It kind of like tries to make it smooth. And you can specify a distance, for example. So when you change the distance, you change the amount of in-betweens you have. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty simple.
It's
and
really
it gives
cool.
me. So for logo type designers, sometimes you get a typeface that's not variable, that's static, that's out of the box, a certain weight, or you have two weights, and you need the logo type to be somewhere in between those two. That you're all set if you use the blend tool. So I am a super huge fan of blend tool, and this is a hack that only time will show you, right?
Yeah.
So there are other aspects of typeface and logo design that I think are worthwhile talking about today. And please, Ari and Ben, let me know if I'm on time or if it's something that I need to rush. But optical size. Optical size is a really cool idea behind logos and behind typefaces. The idea is that typefaces were at one point, right in the beginning of their existence, they were designed point by point. For example, if you wanted a 12-point Garamond, it was designed in metal at that size with specific compensations and ideas so that it was very readable at 12 points. And if you wanted a 60-point typeface, then the details would be much smoother because people were doing this by hand. They were carving these metal things into life. So imagine how crazy it would be to sculpt something that's like 5 points. It's crazy. So the idea today is that you can do these things with variable fonts. So I have DuPincel, which is a next release of our studio. It's a serif font. It's a very classic serif font. And the idea is that when you want to print DuPincel in a small version, the details are less pronounced. You have to have sturdier serif, so you see how thick this is compared to, example, the large version. This is very thin, very detailed. There's more curves to this. So, for example, the small r sits at the baseline, whereas the large r has a cup serif. So you can see kind of like the nuance, and it will work really well on print, for example, the large one, whereas the small one might be very good for text settings or digital settings. The same thing applies to a logo, right? So I gathered a sample from our Behance page, which is called Lush. It's a motel in São Paulo. And they have two different versions for their logo, right? One that is used to do big sizes and one for small sizes. Look how detailed, you still can read the one on the right when it's small, but the one on the left kind of loses resolution. The thins start to spread out and lose its recognition. So that's why sometimes you have to design two different versions of a logo type for different sizes, right? And variable fonts are great for this because you can actually, and this I use every time I want to deliver a file to a client. If I'm not super convinced that a certain weight is the best one for the client, I will actually design a variable logo get the client to tell me which percentage of, whatever they want, and then I can export a static version of that weight. So it's also like a approval tool, like a tool to get the project going. So if you see here, I can see the logo type going from very sturdy to something more display. So it's really simple. And let's say Lush really wanted to go with a 50% logo. I could just generate that version and they would have that going, right? So there's another thing that's specific to variable fonts and variable brand voice. In variable fonts, one thing that's happens a lot is that, let me show you, and I encourage you all to do this once in your life, which is to create outlines of a typeface, right? When you create outlines of a typeface, you are learning so much about its construction. And variable fonts are actually a great learning tool because you kind of see how the typeface was done for real, right? This is a good thing as well as a disclaimer because it also, sometimes it can be a nuisance in some things. For example, when you're
Rodrigo, can you make your Illustrator window larger? Because it's
yes,
split now.
Yes, absolutely. So there you go. And I'll just make it here. So when you have an outline like this, then you can actually see the skeletons of the letters with variable fonts. Most of them are built like this so that it's interpolatable between the lightest version and the heaviest version. So just bear that in mind. But
what does interpolatable mean?
Interpolatable means that you can go smoothly between one weight and the other without any glitch. Let's say, for example, this is totally interpolatable. There's no glitch in between them.
So the way you draw the shapes at the beginning and at the extreme allows for that to be a smooth transition.
Absolutely. Just like, for example, when you do some animation in After Effects, it's the same. You have to have the same number of points between point A and point B, and the points need to be in the same order and direction. That's something that's required for interpolation to happen. That's like this might be the most technical thing I say all day. So there it is.
I'm also curious, does that get tricky if you're trying to go from a sans to a serif or something scripty?
Oh my God, yes.
Right? Because those don't usually have the same amount of points, right?
Absolutely. And I'll see if this one is okay, here's a tricky one then. It's an excellent question. And look at how this L goes from a standard grotesque, it just gets wider, but then at one point it gets a shadow and the empty part here, right? So these are all the same designs, just played around in a different way. And I'll show you what it means. So this is saying Tropa de Elite, Elite Squad, which is a movie from Brazil. And when you do the L, check out the letter L, it's getting wider. And now it's going to get expressive. Look at this.
Wow.
Right? So you go from something that's very static to something that's very shadowy and dynamic, right? If you see the construction here, you'll see all these red dots. These are the ones that are colliding. It's the same point, but there are 2 points here, as I'm showing you, right? There are 2 vector points there. It needs to be, because when I look at it, there's this part here. Maybe I can show you. I don't know if this
zooms in we can see it.
Oh yeah.
You see 15 point, and then when I go to the more expressive one, you see it's the same amount of points, so 15 points as well, right? So that's where things need to be, and you're gonna see that the arrow here points to the beginning of a vector, and this one the beginning of the other vector, and it will be the same here. So this will be the beginning of the first vector, and the other will be the beginning of the other vector. So I mean, this is tricky, but once you get the hang of it, it starts to make a lot of sense, and it allows for something like very expressive like this So this is vanilla. It's a typeface that it's already available on Adobe Fonts as their static weight. And this is totally doable with static weights as well. But I'm showing you something. Let me just do this, not smart guides because it gets blue. But if I want to make a very dynamic, and this is super trendy as well, if you want to make a static version, this is how you do it. Like you can change the slant, you can change the width. And on this particular example, this is really cool because everything around the typeface is kind of dynamic. So if I click and make this more letters, the whole thing behind it also works. So this is totally not related to what our subject is today, but it's still really cool because we use the appearance panel window appearance, which is the best. So there's a group. There's transform, which is only transforming and connecting things. So if I hit transform, there's like 4 copies that are moving 1143 pixels to the right and to the bottom. And then if I hit the content, there are different shapes. So there's a stroke, there's a fill, in which we added a rectangle, transform, and then it becomes this crazy kind of like overlayered paper thing. But back to our subject of the day, you can actually make something very expressive and playful when you're
And I just wanted to point out, if people want to try this out, the variable version of vanilla is available on Type Network. So you can purchase that and then use it in Illustrator for now, until one day we have it on Adobe Fonts, hopefully very soon.
Absolutely. We can't wait for that. There's so much in store for us in terms of variable.
Indeed, it's very exciting. Rodrigo, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left of presentation time.
Absolutely. So I'll make a little bit of a type dance and leave 1 minute or 3 minutes for questions. So quickly, this is also for vanilla, and this is also like this is super doable with variable fonts. You can do these crazy things where you get the Z as in fuzz to kind of match whatever the pedal of the guitar will do.
I've seen virtual plugin versions of guitar pedals, and you turn the fuzz and the font gets fuzzy, and then you turn the fuzz off and the font gets normal again. So that would be a great use case for this.
Absolutely. There's this person called Rob Stenson. He's amazing, and he does a little bit of what you're telling, sound effects. This one was made by Kaká, who's here in the chat today, and we designed this for a digital music company called Espaço Vazio, which means empty space, and the letters dance. So it's not only like doing weights and things, so they kind of dance together. So this made a lot of sense for music, and it's really fun to play with. So yeah, I think those are, maybe the last thing I would show you is Carbona, which is also a recent release of ours. And the axes here, they are not only in weight and slant, but they can also go from a mono space, so like typewriter-like typeface, like Courrier or something like that, all the way into a proportional one. So see how like some serifs start to show, and then you have like more things that are more proportional, and then you can change the weight of the mono, and you see that the space stays the same. So these are very handy for branding and type any kind of project, really, animation and everything. So yeah, I think that's what I was about to say. I hope you really enjoyed this. I am super psyched that I showed this to you today, and I want to know what you think about it and if you have questions.
Yes, drop any questions. We've got a few minutes for questions before we end. That was fantastic, Rodrigo. I feel like I already knew what variable fonts could do, but I feel like I have 10 more examples of what we can do with them and where they can show up. And I think the animation stuff is really key there too. We've had several people in the chat say variable font support in After Effects, please. So I think, that's very exciting as well.
It is super doable in After Effects still. And I think variable fonts, even in After Effects, are great because you can transport them from Illustrator to After Effects. then you, that thing that I showed with the outlines, like this, you will see that it makes life easier even in After Effects, because you have the already interpolated.
The
So that's
skeleton
really
is
good.
already there to do
Yes,
the animation. Yeah, that's great.
perfect. Yes, that's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, I see that Mwendwa says variable font looks fun. It does. It's super fun. What's the type house here? Peter, I believe you wanna know who
The
am
Foundry,
I?
Who
yeah.
are you?
Plow.
Yeah, so I'm Rodrigo Saini. I'm from Plow, a Brazilian type foundry. You can find us on Adobe Fonts. And our website is plow.design. So just drop by, say hi.
I just dropped the links underneath us. You can see them there. So Plow Design, Instagram, and on Behance as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Cool.
Rodrigo, besides branding and animation, what's the main use that you see for variable fonts?
Okay, we've been speaking a lot to UI and UX teams because variable fonts were made by the big companies, Adobe, Microsoft, Apple, and Google, in order to shave bytes of the servers. So that's one of the main reasons variable fonts exist. So, but it also is a fountain of expression. So UX and UI
Yeah.
teams are finding it very interesting to have variable fonts available, and fonts that are custom to what they need in terms of their applications and everything. So it's really interesting to see
And
how it's getting in there, that area too.
yeah, and for websites, right? If you want 10 weights, you have 10 font files. But if you have a variable font, you have one font file, and you simply tell the CSS what weight you want from that one font file, and that makes things faster and smoother and just way easier to deal with.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of websites that are already doing some micro interactions. For example, if you hover over a button, then it becomes a little bolder, and it's smoother and it's more, it's way more fun way to interact.
And you can
It's a
animate that
good,
too, right? Just like we saw,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And some of the animation that I usually do on a daily basis for variable fonts, I actually do on CSS and HTML, just because sometimes it's so much simpler just to animate them using CSS. So it's really, really something.
So cool.
Yeah.
What do you expect in the future of variable fonts? What improvements would you like to have in the future from Cristiano?
All right. So I think overall, it's software support in general. For example, if and I love to sell fonts for people who are not designers. That makes my heart sing a lot because I know that I'm doing what I want, which is making type popular. Um, so for example, if someone grabs a spreadsheet document and start using a variable font, and maybe when something goes from a 0 to 100, the weight of the typeface will be changed just based on that criteria. That kind of thing might be very interesting to notice in the coming years. I think there's a lot to expect from variable fonts. There's one thing that I'm super excited about, which is color variable fonts. So you add color on top of something that it's already animating, and that makes for something really cool. There's this designer called Archer. I cannot remember his name, sorry, but type Archer. Just find that on Google, and he's doing amazing experiments with color variable fonts.
Wow.
And it's exciting, and it's super exciting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, I think that's it for questions for the stream. Also, if you have a Creative Cloud account and you want to check out Plow Fonts, go to the Foundry page on fonts.adobe.com and activate away. Great stuff there, so go check that out. And then if you enjoyed this, follow us on Behance, Adobe Fonts on Behance. This show, as well as every other previous episode, will be posted there. And of course, we'll announce all new ones as well. And then if you have any comments about Adobe Fonts as a user, go to adobefonts.uservoice.com and let us know what you would like to see from the service. Are there fonts you'd like to see? Are there features you'd like to see? If you want to see, even if you want to see variable fonts in After Effects, you could post that there. So definitely drop any ideas and thoughts you have there.
Yeah, or you can just upvote something that's already there. So if it has a lot of votes, it's more likely we'll do it.
Indeed. So Rodrigo, I just want to say thank you so much for coming. This was a fantastic presentation. Variable fonts are really the cutting edge of what is happening, but it's also very useful. It's very practical, and I'm really excited for everybody to get their hands on them.
I hope that they have their minds as blown as mine, because it's really cool stuff. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep.
Thank you for everybody who attended. Thank you so much. We'll see.
Thanks,
Great.
everybody. We'll see you next time.
Good to see everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
Rodrigo.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.